So as I was introduced, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Opyl, but I want to tell you a bit about the story behind Opyl as well today. So I think with coronavirus, quite a few of you now are fairly familiar with the term clinical trials. I don't think I have to maybe explain that too much, but I'll give a little bit of insight into that as we go. This is what we see every day. Some of you would have caught a train or a bus in here this morning, or maybe this is what it looks like in your doctor's surgery. The amount of times we sit and look at our phone and spend time not just on social media, but looking at emails, checking text messages. The phone is now the primary communication channel for the world. Just think to yourself, I want you to imagine what this number is in your mind. How many hours a day do Australians spend on social media? I just want you to think for a minute, think of a number, hold it in your mind. If you thought it was about 2 hours, you'd be right. 2 hours we spend on social media. Now, some of you in the audience may say, I don't spend that on social media, but we have to acknowledge this is what our kids are doing, this is what our brothers and sisters are doing, and the fastest growing group on social media right now are the over 65s. So it's my mum and dad. You should see my mum on Facebook. Actually, I hope you don't. She's really quite out of control now. But it's my daughter, who's 19, teaching her grandmother, who's 75, how to use social media. My mum has rheumatoid arthritis. And so she now follows Nature, one of the biggest medical publications in the world. And she rings me up and she says, Michelle, have you seen the front page of Nature? They're talking about artificial intelligence and diagnosing rheumatoid arthritis. And I'm like, Mum, put the phone down. But this is the new generation of patients. This is what patients are doing now. You know it yourself, you've done it. You've Googled something before you went to the doctor. I can see you smiling. You've done that, so have I. And then you go into the doctor and say, you don't want to admit you've Googled. You go in and say, I've done a bit of research. And this is what I heard in a Facebook group, or this is what my sister told me about that she saw on Twitter. Or when I Googled, this popped in. You know that experience of when you pick up your phone, and this is going to happen to you now. When you get out of this breakfast, you're going to suddenly find in your Facebook feed, if you're on Facebook, maybe some clinical trial ads. Have you thought about participating in a clinical trial? You're going to find it quite curious, and I know many of you have thought about this. How is it that Facebook knows what I've been talking about? So this is the foundation of Opyl, and it's this phenomenon of the digital patient, the rise of social media, the sheer amount of time that people spend on phones. This is where Opyl has been built. We solve 3 big problems for the healthcare sector. We've built 3 technology platforms to solve those problems. One of them launches tomorrow, which I'll tell you about. But the first platform we built was around social media listening. And this is using artificial intelligence to gather public information from social media. So for those of you interested, our position is we only take information that's public, we don't get into private groups, and we certainly don't breach any of those consent rules around data. But we take this general information off social media, we listen to it, we aggregate it, turn it into patterns, and feed it back to pharmaceutical companies, medtechs, biotechs, government. This is market research in a new generation of artificial intelligence. So we've married up social media and artificial intelligence, and social media is artificial intelligence. It's the algorithm that serves information up to you as you go. The next problem we wanted to solve was recruitment to clinical trials, and that's what I'm going to talk about a bit more today. But this time it's using social media to serve information out to you to say, are you happy with your treatment for arthritis? Are you interested in seeing what the new generation of drugs and devices coming out is? And this is where we think we can make a difference. The third platform that we've developed in the background is how to use artificial intelligence to design better clinical trials. And we did a great COVID study last year, and we were able to predict the vaccines and the therapeutics that would make it to market, that were already in clinical trials, and in what order. So that had a procurement opportunity for the government, which we gave them that data for free. We also understood and could see the sort of clinical trials that were very likely to fail. And that's wasted research money. And that's wasted your money as taxpayers, but also as investors in some of these companies. I want to show you this. This is what it looks like on social media. So it was probably about 2008, 2009. At the time, I was Chief Executive of the Biotech and Medtech Industry Association in Victoria. And my job was to communicate the great things that were happening in Victoria in medical research and in emerging biotechs to the world. And we didn't have much money. We're an industry association. They run on nothing. So I said to the board, I'm going to use social media, and they said, don't. So I ignored them, as good chief executives do sometimes. So instead, we jumped in feet first into social media. And these are two examples of what we saw. So the example on the right-hand side here is a discussion that was happening in a type 1 diabetes Facebook group. So it's an open group, it's a public group, and I joined as a member. And this is really important. So anybody that's developing a pharmaceutical product or a medical tech product these days needs to be thinking about what are patients saying on social media about that product. What questions are they asking? And now because of COVID, pharma and medtech companies can't get sales reps through the door. They won't see doctors, and doctors also don't really want to see them. So pharma and medtech are now looking for different ways to serve information up to doctors. So the next question is, how many doctors are on social media? And I can tell you exactly because we map them. So in Australia, we've got 24.8% of all registered medical practitioners with the Medical Board of Australia are on social media and self-identified, public social media. So it makes sense, doesn't it? So if doctors are on social media and COVID has driven up their numbers on social media, because they're not waiting for papers to be published on COVID, they want to see what their colleagues are doing in Israel or in Italy, as it turned out right at the beginning, and then the US, and now they're interested to share the information that they have with their colleagues in India and Brazil. So we're seeing a new generation of publishing, and it's not being held by Nature or the medical journals, it's being held by the individual doctor or healthcare practitioner. They're the ones publishing their clinical experience straight away, immediately, to Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever. On the other side, with that lovely bubbly photo, is Michael Dickinson, who's one of the leading haematologists at the Victorian Comprehensive Cancer Centre, and he's on Twitter. And he was sharing information about, good news, we're about to start recruiting to a clinical trial. And that was the seed of a big opportunity in the way that I was thinking about clinical trials. So I enrolled myself in a phase 1 safety study. So this was an Ebola vaccine study. And you'd probably raise your eyebrows and go, what was she thinking? Getting into an Ebola vaccine study. So don't worry, I bought shares in the company. So they're listed on NASDAQ. So I became a shareholder. And then in the shareholder meetings, whenever they did their calls, I'm probably one of those activist shareholders in a way, but I was saying, how long do you think it's going to take to recruit to that study? How many people are you looking for? And they were all bolshy and said, oh, it's only going to take us 6 months. And I went, yeah, right. So I said, how many sites are you opening? Oh, we're going to open about 16 sites around the world. So they didn't know that I was recruited into the study. And I later found out I was one of 2 women in the world recruited to that study. I also found out that it cost them $28,000 to recruit me. It was an 18-month trial, and I deliberately missed a few appointments to see how hard they would work to keep me in the study. You can see what a bit of a pain I am. But I call this research. But this was me sitting in the trial unit in Victoria at the Alfred Hospital, and you can see my dosing tag, and I shared my entire experience to social media. So if any of those investors were following me on Twitter, I was sharing information about the adverse event I'd just had. Small, but a big deal. I was sharing information about how many times I turned up. I was leaking information about the clinical trial to social media. Now that's a big problem. Maybe that's another problem to solve a different day. But it was important to understand that the company, this listed company on NASDAQ, were not on social media. They were not monitoring their clinical trial. The hospital wasn't monitoring anybody's use. I never got a warning to say, don't do this. So it's a big deal here. But it gave me some really important information about clinical trials. So here's some facts. 86% of clinical trials fail to recruit on time and on budget, and this is the problem I'm going to solve. 86%. And for each month that a clinical trial is delayed, it costs the business around about $20 million at the end. This is running down their patent on a drug or a device. Time is money, and it's serious money in this sector. Many of you are investors, maybe in the biotech or medtech sector, and you'll often get that press release or the announcement to the ASX saying, good news, we've just opened our phase 2 clinical trial. Or good news, we've just opened 5 trial sites, and one of them is out here in Brisbane and another one down at Gold Coast Hospital. So you get all of these great announcements. We've opened this, we've started this, we've dosed our first patient. The question you need to be asking these companies is the question I'm asking them. And that is, what's your strategy for recruitment? How long do you think it's going to take? What's your recovery strategy? Are you using social media to recruit? How many different opportunities are you using here? We know that it costs $19 million per clinical trial, and this is the cost of clinical trials. Some clinical trials in phase 3 can cost up to $350 million, but the average is about $19 million per clinical trial, and 33% of that budget is spent on recruitment. Now, I don't think you need a PhD to work out that that's ridiculously inefficient. So the cost of social media ads, when we've done recruitment for Movember, and we do all of the clinical trial recruitment around prostate cancer and men's depression and exercise studies, it costs us $21 per click to get a patient to go all the way down through this digital triage, $21. That's a huge saving, and that's also a big profit margin for me. I want to introduce you to Opyl. So Opyl is the name of the recruitment platform that opens up tomorrow, and this is using artificial intelligence and social media, gaming the algorithm on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram to ensure that we're delivering up research opportunities to people who are genuinely motivated to get the best care in their condition. This is using social media for good. We often have these conversations of social media is bad, social media wastes time, there's rubbish messages on social media. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not all bad. Motivated patients want something better. The bottleneck, and this is the reason for the company, the bottleneck is doctors. So right now we've been recruiting to clinical trials exactly the same way for about 40 years. And people in this industry will say, we're very conservative. We have regulatory barriers. This is the way we do it. The doctor is the gatekeeper. I'm here to smash that. I've had enough of doctors being the gatekeeper. So right now, when you walk into your GP or your specialist, they say, here's the drug and here's the medical device and here's the diagnostic and you do what I tell you to do. These days, patients want more. Patients are like me. They're going to go and search and they want more. So right now, doctors are not really incentivised to recruit into clinical trials, certainly not GPs. Specialists lose patients when they go into clinical trials, and that's a real problem. So we need to get around the doctor. With the greatest respect to any medicos that happen to be sitting here today, with respect, we're disrupting you. We're disrupting the pathway to better care. We're giving patients the choice, and it's about time patients did have a choice. When patients come to Opyl, they see every single clinical trial in the world automatically registered to our platform. Every single one. Now, for those of you that know this space, know a little bit about it, you would have heard there's a number of competitors here. In fact, there are about 190 competitors in the clinical trial recruitment space using social media and a platform like this. We are a Me Too, and I'm not going to pretend we're unique. What we are unique at is using social media. And our listening tool, the artificial intelligence tool we built right at the start, that's the difference. That's the silver bullet. That the 10 people in my team know social media in healthcare inside and out. That we have tools that we think we can improve and game the SEO, the search engine optimization. We think we can use the algorithm for a lot of benefit in this way. The difference is just about every other platform doesn't have every single clinical trial in the world available. Patients will be able to come in, select the condition they're interested in, and go through that pathway. As a business, we're an agile business. So the product that we're putting on market tomorrow is not finished. It's not complete. But the functional element, and that is using AI to match a patient based on 6 or 7 key questions to a clinical trial, works. And there we unlock the revenue opportunity. This is where the client, which is a pharma company, biotech company, hospital site, or a contract research organisation, can come into our platform for free, and then they're going to get FOMO, fear of missing out, because they're going to see all of their clinical trials on the screen, and there's going to be a little circle with a number in it, and that's the number of patients who have put their hand up to say, I'm interested, but they have to pay to unlock that. They'll then have to pay to get their clinical trial featured in our social media feed. So this is the difference we're going to make. So we're coming in very aggressively here, very competitive in the space. And I think because of our experience in healthcare and also our experience with social media, it makes us better than everybody else in the space. So in conclusion, I want to leave you with this. This is the future, exactly what's happening here. And this is happening in your families, it's happening in your office, it's happening to everybody around you, your next door neighbours, the people you work with. This is where the digital natives, our kids who are 12 and 19 and 22, this is what they're doing. They're taking their phone and they're showing it to grandma, or they're showing it to mum or to their auntie and saying, here's this. When we were recruiting for a prostate cancer study for Movember, they'd spent 2.5 years recruiting. They needed 140 patients, they had 17. We recruited the rest of those patients in less than 6 weeks through Facebook, and we didn't target men. We targeted their wives. We targeted their daughters, and we're targeting their homosexual partners, because these are the people that are helping to make those decisions. Carers really matter in this space. So you may not be on social media, but your wife is, or your brother is, or your kids are. And they're the ones who will bring this opportunity to you and say, Mum, are you happy with your rheumatoid arthritis medication? Do you think maybe there's a better way? Have a look at this. I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much for your attention.